What's up guys, how you doing? Welcome to another video. So today we're talking about the Canon R6. I thought it'd be interesting to go back and discuss a topic that I discussed before, but quite a long time ago. And since then I've been using the Canon R6 for, God, it's crazy to even imagine how long it's been out. I think like 2 years. For all my professional work. And so I would now consider myself very experienced with the Canon R6. I think I've learned a few little tricks, and I certainly have learned how I get the best from it. So this is about how can you get the best for your sports work using the Canon R6. I'm going to tell you how I set up mine and what I do to ensure I get the best possible performance for it for sports. So right now we are filming on the R6, so I don't have it here in my hand to show you, but it doesn't matter because most of this is theoretical stuff, and I'm going to share a few pictures and stuff as we go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about, or the first few points really, are around the topic of autofocus. This is probably the area that I get the most questions sent to me about. People message me through Instagram and say to me, hey look, I'm struggling with my autofocus on the R6, here's what I'm experiencing. And normally it's related to one of the next few issues that I'm going to talk about. And the first one I'm going to say is don't use the face tracking autofocus when you're shooting sports. That's my opinion. Doesn't mean it is technically the best answer, but in my experience of trying to use it in all different scenarios, that is my opinion. Don't use the face tracking when it comes to sports. I found it jumps around too much. If you've got multiple players in a frame, it doesn't know who to focus on, and it moves around. It's great if you've got one person in the frame and no one else is coming in or out of that frame. It's really, really good. So, for example, if I'm taking a photo of like one player warming up or the manager on the sideline, I do flick into the facial recognition autofocus to make sure I lock onto that face and get the best focus. And I take my shots and then I switch out of it again when I go back to the match action. That's my advice, because during the match action it gets confused, jumps around, different players in and out of the frame, and you're just going to get more shots missed than you are hit in my experience. Moving into the next point and sticking with autofocus, that is to make sure you're using the AI servo mode, or AL servo as it is known on this channel. Now that sounds straightforward, but a lot of people don't realise that. You know, they'll try to shoot in one shot, and I've had several people, in fact, had someone message me, I think yesterday, to say, you know, I'm really struggling with the autofocus, and when I got into their settings with them, that was it. They weren't on the AI servo mode, which means the focus wasn't tracking a moving subject, and that's really important. You know, the person who I was dealing with just got a bit confused as it happens. You know, they thought AI servo was something more that you would use if you were using back button focus, and they weren't using back button focus, and that's fine, you don't have to. But if you're going to shoot sports or moving subjects, AI servo mode is definitely the way that you need to go. So we're in AI servo mode, we're not using the face tracking autofocus. Which autofocus are we going to use? Well, in my experience and my opinion, I use the single point autofocus and I set it to the center point. I do that because then I know what I point my camera at, it's going to focus on. Like I said, if I'm shooting a person standing still or a manager on the sideline, it's different. But when you're in the action, people running all around the place, I just want that camera to focus on the thing that I'm pointing at in the middle of my frame. So I use single point autofocus and I set it to the center point. That is how I shoot 90% of my sports work. Single point autofocus set to the center point with the Canon R6. Doesn't mean it's the only way, doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way, but what it does mean is that I think it's the best way. Okay, next up we're talking memory cards. Now, something which I've had messages on before is people saying that the camera is slow, it keeps stalling up, they don't get enough bursts when they're shooting lots of images. Well, in a couple of occasions I've identified that that is down to the memory cards. Really important that you get yourself some fast memory cards. Personally, I use the Lexar ones, they look like this, and I'll put a link of those in the description. Those are the ones I use. There's plenty of other really fast memory cards, but those are the ones that I use. Fast memory card means your images will process quicker, your buffer won't get stalled up trying to deal with a slow memory card. To get the best from your camera, you need really fast memory cards. That is a really, really important one for me. Okay, next up, we're talking the shutter. Now, for most sports with the Canon R6, I would recommend using the mechanical shutter. Yes, you're going to get less frames per second with the mechanical shutter, but it isn't exactly slow. You still get decent frames per second. Now, I'm not saying the electronic shutter is rubbish. I'm not one of these people who will say you can never use it, the rolling shutter's too bad. I've shot plenty of sports with it. I find it struggles a bit with really fast sports like basketball. You do get some odd shaped arms and things like that, but I've shot lots of football with electronic shutter and with perfectly good results. So you can use it, but for the majority of sports I recommend the mechanical shutter with the Canon R6. I find that gets you the most hit rates on images and you don't get funny skewed limbs or a ball or something like that, which you won't all the time with electronic shutter, but you sometimes will. So to get the best, I recommend with the Canon R6 mechanical shutter. Okay, next up we're going to say take advantage of the crop mode feature that the R6 has. Now this might be another controversial one where people say, whoa, hang on a minute, what are you talking about there? Why would you crop the sensor? Well, you know what, so when you go into the crop mode, yes, there is the argument that it is no different from shooting just full frame and then cropping the image in. And in lots of ways that's true, but where I find it useful is if I'm trying to focus on something that is far away. So let's say I'm on the far side of the pitch and I want to get a shot of that manager directing the team somehow. What I would often do is go into the crop mode, to the 1.6 crop mode within the camera, so I get a kind of zoomed in look on my picture at what I'm looking at down the lens, and then I take that photo. If I shoot it full frame, I'm going to have to crop it in anyway, so by going into crop mode, I get a better view of what I'm looking at down the viewfinder. Enables me to compose my shot a little bit better and get my autofocus just right and ensure I'm focused on the right thing and get my shot. So whilst I don't use the crop system loads, increasingly lately I've found myself using it to my advantage with things like that. Maybe I'm trying to get, you know, a little stock image of the goalkeeper at the far end of the pitch. I go into that crop sensor so I can make sure I'm right in on him, get my image lined up nicely, and I take the shot. I'd have to crop it if I shot it in the full frame anyway, so I do that just to give myself the better opportunity of getting the best possible shot that I can. Okay, next up we're talking about the articulating screen on the back of the R6. Make use of it. Now, those of us who've been used to shooting with cameras that didn't have articulating screens for ages, like my 72 didn't, my 1DX didn't, it's been really good to take advantage. When I'm doing things like shots over the top of players' huddles and stuff like that, to be able to tilt the screen so I'm looking up at my camera and being able to see what I'm looking at is so useful compared to going blind like you used to have to do when I was shooting with like my 1DX or something. Yeah, you could put it into live view mode so you could see on the back of the screen, but even then, if you're reaching up with the camera and tilting it down, you can't see the back of the screen. So take advantage of that articulating screen. I've used it to get images that I would have struggled with before, so I really recommend it. The other place I use it if you guys shoot basketball, I set my camera down on the ground real low, tilt it up to get that cool like underneath wide angle shot, and I have the screen facing up at me so I can see what I'm looking at. I really find it useful. Take advantage of the articulating screen that the Canon R6 has. Last but certainly not least, I'm going to say don't worry about the grip. Okay, this was a big one for me when the camera first came out. Having used the 1DX series for a long time, I felt like, oh, you know what, I've got to have the grip. I won't be able to shoot without the grip. I had the grip on like my 72, for example, and so I thought I'm going to have to buy the grip. But then the grip was like £400 and I thought there's no way I'm spending that much money on a grip. So kind of, I guess, standing by my moral values of an expensive grip, I didn't buy one. And then I thought, you know what, I'll buy one when they're a bit cheaper, or I'll buy one when a third party comes out with one. And I just kind of didn't. And I've got used to it. And really what I've realised is that actually it's not much hardship not having a grip. My R6 is, oh, here we go. I've got a 72 that I can show you with. I've just got used with my R6 to shooting like this and, oh, I need to shoot portrait, so I shoot like this. And you really do get used to it. I've realised that all my fuss about having a grip and being so worried about not having a grip, doesn't really make any difference. So my advice would be, don't worry about the grip. I've heard people say, oh, I'm not going to buy it because of the grip. I've heard people say, I'm not buying the R7 because you can't get a grip for it. Honestly, what would I say? Don't worry about it. You get used to it. You hold your camera like this, you turn and you shoot like this. It really is that simple, and you really do get used to it very, very quick. So I hope you guys found this video interesting. I hope it will help you get the best from your Canon R6, especially if you're shooting sports and action. If you found the video useful, do me a favor, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Do all that usual YouTube stuff for me. Plenty more videos to come on the channel. I had a couple of messages with Mark Curtin. Hopefully him and I are going to get onto a live Q&A or something together soon. And at some point, him and I will shoot a video together in person. We need to make sure we get that done at some point. If you don't know Mark, check out his channel. I'll link it in the description below. Right now, he's way more active than I am on YouTube. He's getting videos out every week, so make sure you go and check him out. Guys, thank you very much for watching. I will see you on the next video.